Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
I know you're trying really hard, but I feel like you started trying and it's too late now.
Was he trying, though? I don't know. I mean, he's tried before, but he continued to cheat and would admit it. I mean, that's the whole odd thing about his presentation. I've seen clients like this before, but he would admit it and say he was sorry, and he seemed to be genuine, at least part of him. It's hard to know, but I don't. Is he working on it? I don't know. They would know, and of course they've had a lot more session time than we've seen, but I don't know. It's hard for me to gauge. If she were my sister, I would say, well, typically what I will go to, and this comes from addiction, in that there's a lot of people in situations where you have a partner or a family member who has chronic problems with a substance, and they will relapse or binge or have periods of time of sobriety, and you start to get your hopes up, and then everything comes crashing down with a relapse. And particularly for people that use in that binge manner, in that they don't use for maintenance, they don't use every day, they will binge for a while. Well, for those folks, they can go for a long time without using, and they might even consciously believe that everything's fine. They might even be going to treatment, but the underlying issues haven't been addressed yet, and that's fine. Relapse, you can consider it a relapse. But for some people, especially over time, so that's the question, right? And you're in that situation, you have a loved one that is seemingly saying the right things. You can never know, but they seem genuine, that they want to change, and that they see the value in changing, and that they care about your feelings. But it's not something that you can see every day. You don't know. Proof is in the pudding, right? You don't know if they've really changed until time passes. And so what I will tell people, and what I operate from the place, the principle I follow in my own life, is that, like with someone that has an ongoing major problem with addiction, then a good milestone is a year of sobriety, of obvious sobriety and obvious treatment, where they are like a typical story. Every story is different, every circumstance is different. But say that I had a friend or a cousin or something who would binge alcohol and other substances, say once a month for 5 days, would have this huge bender, and but they were capable of being sober for a few months. And I wasn't close enough to the person to know their everyday activity, so I wouldn't know if they were sneaking drinks or something. But I was being harmed by getting close to the person, however close that was. And what I would be looking for was a year. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to completely reject the person, but I'm not going to assume that they're going to be sober until I see a year of sobriety and a year of them say they go to AA every day, and they are also in treatment. They are addressing their health. They're in individual therapy, working on the trauma that fuels the shame and the addiction. They are talking the way a typical person talks in early recovery. They're proud of getting their coins at AA. They post publicly that they are 60 days sober, because when you start to post publicly, one, you've dealt with the shame and sufficiently such that you can just admit it. That's a big part of AA is, my name is Joe and I'm an alcoholic, that kind of thing. There's a lot that is involved. It's not just introducing yourself. There is a hurdle that you have to jump over in order to just say that internally and out loud. And it's a necessary step in recovery for most people, in my experience. And for this individual, I would, there would be all those things. Oh, and, people in true recovery, not always, but typically they will be public about their sobriety because they want to signal to everyone, including their their non-alcoholic friends or their friends who don't suffer from addiction, because they're signaling to, like, I'll say for my, if I had a friend that did that, I would be assured that their drinking buddies would be alerted, look, this person is going through recovery. And if you're a drinking buddy, you either have to say, okay, I'm going to let them be sober and I'm not going to drink with them. Or if you're a problem yourself, you're going to be like, oh, they're getting sober, I don't want to hang out with them anymore. It really challenges those relationships. And then to the acquaintances like myself, I would know, well, I shouldn't be drinking with them, or I shouldn't invite them to something that has alcohol in it or something. So when you're public about it, it's a huge step. And for people that are toying with recovery, often that will be one of the later things that they will do. Not all the time, but so those are the things I look for with something like this. So that's the model I'm operating from. Well, for someone like a Suelu, what I'd be looking for would be a similar situation where there would be a year of not having cheated or lied about anything. It's not hard not to lie. I don't know if my wife has ever lied to me about anything. At least nothing significant. And I certainly haven't known about a lie that she has made. And I've never lied to my wife about anything significant. About anything. I mean, I'm trying to think. Maybe I bought her a gift that I was trying to surprise her with, and I lied in that way. I don't know. But it's not hard not to lie. So he could go for a year without any noticeable lying or cheating. We could never know if he's actually, and maybe there would be a share your location thing on your phone, maybe full access password to your phone. If that's okay with a Suelu, that would help, right? That sort of thing. And that, not only that, because anyone can white knuckle sobriety. Anyone can white knuckle themselves if they're desperate enough. But you need to actually change the underlying issue. So if he were in therapy meaningfully, weekly therapy, and he comes home from therapy every other session and says, oh my God, I just realized I was doing that to you because of these reasons, and I've learned about these traumas. If I were Kalani and I heard those things, I would be encouraged. I wouldn't know if the future is bright. But anything short of that, then if he were seemingly not cheating and seemingly not lying to me for, say, 3 months, but he wasn't tackling the issue head on, meaning that, like, if I were Kalani and I was like, hey, you should go to therapy, and he was like, oh yeah, totally, yeah, I totally want to go to therapy because I totally want to work on this, and then a week goes by, a month goes by, he's still not in therapy, and I'm in a position where I'm having to go, so did you get in therapy? Then I would immediately know, no, he hasn't hit bottom. He hasn't had the moment of clarity. He doesn't want to face this. He's had ample opportunity. He's talked to therapists. He has seen the consequences. This has gone on for years. He knows that he has a problem. He's cried as he has said there's something wrong with him. If he actually was going to change, and even if he were in therapy, it wouldn't guarantee he would change. It could take years. If he was in therapy, a Suelu, for 5 years, there's a good chance he would probably cheat again during that time, but at least there's a trajectory. If someone enters recovery, do we think that everything's okay? No. But they're at the beginning of their recovery process, and people pull out of recovery sometimes. But so I would, if it was just 3 months and he wasn't just like independent of you asking him questions, he's been just calling therapists left and right, and he's making sure that therapy's going to work for him. That's someone who really wants to change. That's someone who really wants to work on these things. And anything short of that, then things aren't likely to change. And it sucks because some of you might be in that position where you have a spouse like that or a family member. It sucks. It sucks to watch people flush their life down the toilet and not take an opportunity. And there's stigma of therapy, and it's hard to find the right therapist. But if someone really wants to, they will find a way to make it work. They will shop around for 5 therapists. They will find a way to make their insurance pay for it. They will find a pro bono therapist, or maybe even a low-cost coach of some kind. God forbid. You heard me if you listened to my episode about it. But some coaches can be absolutely great. The vast majority of coaches, I don't think I would recommend people engage with, just anecdotally. But my point is that if someone or they just enter into a self-help thing where they're like, I'm still working on the therapy thing, but I bought these 2 books and I've been watching these YouTube videos and I'm really thinking, and I bought this like workbook to work on my attachment style. There's a lot of shit someone can do. And if they're not doing any of those things, then no matter how much they want to change, they're not going to change. A Swelu needs all of those things and more before he can even begin to change.
Like, you want to divorce me? Yes.
So even that is as passive as it gets. I think they edited in some space there, but he has to bring up, so you want to divorce me? I would have loved it. But of course, I think given her issues, she couldn't say that she could have said, I want to divorce. It wouldn't have been hard for her to say that. It wouldn't have been hard for her to say that a long time ago. It wouldn't have been hard for her to say that before she met up with the guy. And I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying that she deserves to know herself and to assert it. But I don't think she's at that place yet. I will also say that being in a relationship with a passive person can be frustrating. This is a different sort of issue because of a Swaler's behavior. But if you've ever been in it, because I'm not passive, I'm the opposite. And if you're ever in a relationship with a passive person who either is just passive out of fear or passive out of the fact that they don't know what they want, then it can be hard to be in a relationship with them because, for me, when I'm in a relationship with a passive person, like just going back to the example of spaghetti, like I was saying earlier, if I'm saying, hey, friend of mine, let's go to dinner. Do you want to go to dinner? Sure. And I'm like, okay, does sure mean yes, or does sure mean that they're just agreeing to something that they don't want to do? Or are they like, they're okay with it? But, it's just like, I want to hang out with a friend that wants to hang out with me. So, but I moved past that. And like, okay, well, what kind of restaurant do you want to go to? And maybe I've chose the past 5 restaurants. And I feel like that doesn't feel good. So I want them to choose. So, I've chose the past 5, you choose the next one. And they're like, oh, whatever you want. And I'm like, well, hey, what, you've been there before. I assume everyone's been there before. Not only is it just frustrating to have to extract, because, if someone asked me and said, hey, I've chosen the past 5 restaurants, which restaurant do you want to go to? I would immediately have things that I would want to do because I'm in connection with myself and I don't have a problem asserting myself, especially when someone is asking me and I want to prove to them that I'm in the world and I'm in the relationship and I want to do it. If they said, which day would you like to hang out? If I were to identify a time and a place, then that shows that I am dedicated to this friend such that I am willing to commit to an action and I'm willing to investigate what I want regarding them. It says that you're involved, you're connected, you're at least enthusiastic enough to do that. If some random person comes on the bus and is trying to sell me some watches that I don't want, and they start showing me a bunch of the watches and they're like, look at these, which one do you like? Which one do you like? Because I don't want to get involved, I'd be like, I don't know. Because I don't want to get involved. If I wanted to get involved, I'd be like, oh, well, let's see here. Oh, I kind of like this one. But if I'm scared and I'm just like, get away from me, and I don't feel safe enough to say get away from me, then I might kind of entertain it. Like, oh, I don't know, they all look okay. when you have a friend or someone close to you that treats you that way, like, yeah, whatever you want, you just get this sense like, do you want me? Do you want contact with me? Or are you tolerating me? Or are you wanting to get away from me? Are you just okay with, or what do you want? And it's not their fault, of course, but it's also not the responsibility of a friend or a brother or a sister or a cousin to have to change that with someone. That individual, deserves to go to therapy to work on that. I'm just saying, it can be frustrating is the thing. And so if any of my tone has that tone, then that's why. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's a new year, so of course it's time for New Year's resolutions. But often those are just manifestations of internalized harmful voices that tell us we're not good enough. So instead of making a resolution to change something, let's recognize that we are already good enough. Now, most people think of therapy as a place for us to work on our problems, but there are several schools of thought within the field of psychotherapy that adamantly reject that paradigm, like narrative therapy and solution-focused. Instead, these clinicians help us focus on what we're already doing well. And by helping us do that, data shows that we often will gravitate towards more beneficial patterns. Well, one place you can find such therapists is on BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk. And to be clear, going to a restaurant or ordering spaghetti is not the real problem. The real problem is when you're asking someone, but it still can feel distancing. And it's weird because there's nothing overtly distancing or withdrawing about it, but it feels distant and it hurts people's feelings. But to be clear, those are lesser issues than, do you want to be married to me? Do you want to live with me? Do you want to go on a date with me? Do you want to kiss me? These are things that if you are asking someone or you're bidding for those things and you get the constant impression from the other person that they're only doing it because you're pressuring them or asking them and they don't want to feel bad, so they're doing it out of that motivation, then that doesn't feel good, right? It feels like someone's tolerating you or they're just loving you or being in a relationship with you because they don't want to make you angry or they don't want to not be in a relationship or something. You want that obvious evidence that the other person wants to be with you. They move in, now it doesn't have to be all the same. Sometimes some people will initiate and some people, there's different initiation patterns, but when all you get is that kind of passivity, then it's hard to sift through because for the non-passive person, there's nothing you can put your finger on that says this person is a jerk face or this, because, the passive person isn't being mean. They might even be one of the nicest people on the planet. And there's nothing you can put your finger on in terms of this person is rejecting me, because there's nothing like that. There's no overt evidence of rejection or of withdrawal. They're there. They're sitting right next to you, right? But you don't get any sense that they want to be with you, that they desire you as a friend, as a colleague, as a partner, and it just wears on you over time and can be crazy making.
I've been fighting for almost 7 years to make this work. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Okay, good. I don't want to do it anymore. That's good. That's good.
Repetitive infidelities and repetitive affairs, because we're looking at that as a potential addictive and compulsive nature.
I've already been over this. I don't know, Suelu, the way that this therapist does, of course, but in terms of the edit, I haven't seen any evidence that points in that direction. I haven't seen a ton of evidence otherwise, but this assumption that it's compulsive and addictive is not scientifically supported. Could there be evidence that I don't know about? Absolutely. I'm just throwing it out there that it's a very frequent identification, apparently sometimes by clinicians, that, well, when it shouldn't be. I'll just put it that way. Because there are so many roads to infidelity, so many roads to chronic infidelity. It's sort of like saying to somebody who is often withdrawn, like they will come home from work and just sit down in front of the TV and not really interact with their family very much. And it hurts everyone around them. Would you say that that person is addicted? Well, people might say they're addicted to TV, but say they're even there. They just don't talk much. Say they don't even watch TV. The husband comes home and there's dinner on the table and he's just really quiet. And he has eye contact to some extent, but he's just in his own world or just doesn't want to put effort in. Would you say that he's addicted to not talking? There's a lot of roads to why someone would withdraw, why someone would do things to sabotage themselves, why someone would not recognize that they are responsible for other people's feelings. There's a lot of different roads to infidelity that don't have anything to do with a clinical compulsion, because a compulsion is quite a thing. If you've ever had a compulsion, If you haven't, then you probably don't know unless you're an expert or you had someone close to you who had a compulsion. Compulsions are rough. Like the example that I can think of for myself is when I was compulsively addicted to cigarettes. Like I would be trying to quit, and this is, 25 years ago-ish, and I would not have smoked for, say, a week, and then I would have this craving, and I would be like, no, you don't smoke anymore, But it would just be this dominating thought in my head of just go to the store. And at the time, I lived like a couple blocks from a convenience store and in Wallingford, Seattle, if you're familiar, and I could easily just walk out the door and go to the store. And I'd just be like, no, don't do it. And I'd be just right down the store. You just right over there. Or actually, no, I wasn't living that well. Anyway, point is it wasn't hard for me to get cigarettes. It's not like I lived in the country and I had to drive a half an hour or something. And I couldn't do anything else. It was just this massive, overpowering itch that ruined my life. I couldn't do anything. And I had to endure that. Eventually, when I did quit, I had to endure all that. And I had to put a lot of systems in place to not trigger those kinds of cravings and to have a lot of barriers to satisfying the craving. I had to, I'm trying to remember the whole system, but obviously there would be no cigarettes in the house. I would have to not ever get bored. That's another part of managing compulsions is, especially in the beginning, is never get bored, never have free time. Essentially, you have to be constantly scheduled out so that you are always doing something. There's actually some brain science involved in this that we know of. Anyway, so that's a compulsion. Do we think that Asuelu has that level of compulsion? And I'm not even talking about a severe compulsion. I'm talking about an average compulsion. The compulsion that I had to smoke was not severe, not as severe as what I've seen other people with. So do we think that Asuelu cheated because of that? Do we think that?
Go from someone treating you so nicely back to begging for someone to just be nice to you.
If I go back, I regret how I act. I regret how I treat her. I try to be nicer. I try to treat her as...
Yeah, Asuelu's in that mode that he gets into. I don't think there's any confidence that anyone should have, particularly Kalani. I think she's even kind of getting upset about this way that he's not. Asuelu might just be throwing it out there, but it seems like he's trying to make a case, but I don't think Kalani is going to buy it for the millionth time.
the best as I can. So I'm very different person right now.
I appreciate the work that you've done. I think we have a great friendship here. The way you help me with the boys and then like the conversations we have and the laughs we have, it's great. And I want to keep that. And it's a friendship.
Okay, good. Good. I guess as a citizen, I do hope that Kalani moves on. Because I don't see that threshold or Asuelu crossing the threshold that I was saying earlier, that a long time ago, if he really wanted to work on this, he could have worked on it. He could have gone to therapy weekly. He could have bought a bunch of self-help books. He could have faced his traumas. Just him saying that he's changed or that he cares, he's been doing that from the beginning. I think the first time he got caught, which is, I think, interesting, that when he was caught, he felt bad. I think it seemed legit. I don't know, but I think Kalani believes that he legit feels bad, and at the same time, still is saying, well, I guess, because usually when, at least I think the general public, when we think of cheaters, we think that they don't feel bad, but they usually do. And we think, well, if someone feels bad about cheating, then that must mean they're not going to cheat again, or they're very unlikely to cheat again. That's not a good metric. Now, if someone doesn't care, then that doesn't provide much reason for confidence, but in terms of them not cheating again. But to feel bad about cheating, that doesn't mean anything. If in some ways, I've seen people feel absolutely terrible about cheating, and that's all kind of part of the problem. Not that they shouldn't feel bad, but they're so ashamed of themselves, they're so self-hating that the cheating just plays into that. They cheat, they hate themselves, which gives them a need to do something about it, which manifests in a number of passive behaviors, including cheating, which results in them feeling shitty about themselves. You know, it's a similar process with some addictions. That's not the compulsive side, that's just the emotional side. But the point is that, and maybe that's what they're saying when they're saying addiction. You know, I don't know, but maybe they're saying addiction because it's part of like an emotional shame process that they think Asuelu is in. So I shouldn't talk shit about people, and I'm not. I shouldn't at least appear to be talking shit about other clinicians without knowing what they're saying exactly. But point is that he it could have worked on it a long time ago, but he hasn't. And so from my citizen perspective, as a therapist, you know, people can do whatever they want to, and there's a lot of paths, and what do I know? As a citizen watching this show, I wish that she would leave him and just figure out a new life. Now, she needs an equal amount of therapy, not only recovery from this, but also, I think, to find herself. All right. Well, if you want to support what we're doing here, you can become a YouTube member. That's pretty easy. The button is below. Or you can become a patron on Patreon, or both. We tend to publish our exclusive videos on YouTube and our exclusive audio content on Patreon. So sometimes people do both because they want access to both, which is just great when people do that. That's very nice of you to do. Either way, it's nice of you just to watch. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.